Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can all hear me. I'm Pam Christie, and I would like to welcome everyone to today's webinar, Person-Centered Transition Planning, presented by Beth Gallagher. Again, my name is Pam Christie. I'm the training coordinator here at Peak Parent Center. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so that you know how to participate in today's event. If you are connected to today's webinar through the internet, you should see your attendee interface or control panel in the upper right-hand corner of your own computer's desktop. By default, you are listening in to today's webinar using your computer's speaker system. If you would prefer to join over the phone, just select telephone in the audio pane of your control panel, and the dial-in information will be displayed. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's presenter by typing your questions into the question pane of the control panel. There's also an option for you to raise your hand, so if you could do that as well, we would appreciate it. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation, and the presenter and I will be monitoring the questions, and we will address them as we go and at the end of today's presentation. Handouts are available for download in the handout window. There are 2 handouts, Head, Heart, Hand, and Liberty Plan Steps. As you leave today's webinar, you will receive an evaluation survey about the presentation. We would appreciate it if you would take just a minute to complete that and provide your feedback. You will also receive a follow-up email very soon with a link to view a recording of today's webinar. So again, welcome to today's webinar, Person-Centered Transition Planning, presented by Beth Gallagher, and Beth Schaffner at Peak will be taking it from here. Thank you.
Thanks, Pam. Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Beth. I am the director of Peak's Rehab Services Administration Shift project. It is a 5-year project, and we focus on providing information and resources to youth and families of youth with disabilities regarding transition. And we're very excited to be able to bring you this webinar today. And I will be sharing a little more information with you at the end of the webinar about some other resources that are available through our project. But I want to make sure now that we have plenty of time to hear from our speaker today. Beth Gallagher is the founder and owner and director of an agency called LifeWorks in San Diego, which was founded in 2004. And her work has been primarily with people with developmental disabilities. And over 2 decades, she has been focusing on creating personalized supports and services that that help people to realize their personal vision and dreams for the future. She has worked with Peak in the past, has worked with families and youth. We are very, very pleased to have her. And I just want to mention that Beth's message and the strategies that she's going to share with you are relevant for everyone. It's no matter what a person's challenges they might experience in their life. And I know that the types of inspiration and strategies that Beth offers are things that have helped me make a difference in my own life. So we're very pleased to have her here today. And Beth, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Beth. So I just realized as you were talking that I think pretty much my website is out of touch because it's not 2 decades, it's over 3 decades. How scary is that? So So yeah, for 32 years I've been doing this work, and I find it to be extremely exciting and inspirational, and I think every day it piques my curiosity. So one of the things that I wanted to find out is who I'm talking to today. Webinars are a challenge for me because I can't see you. You can, I think, see me. So sorry about that. But so I wanted to ask you to raise your hand. There's an option on your screen to raise your hand when I ask you a question. So if you could raise your hand in response to who you are. I want to know who on the webinar is an advocate, a self-advocate, somebody experiencing disability. I don't see any hands. Is it possible that there's no self-advocates on there?
Excuse me, Beth. We can see the hands here. I'm not sure you can see them. So
okay.
Let us tell you
that
we have four hands up in response.
All right. Next question is, who in the house is a parent? Oh, now I see some hands. Okay. I can't see all of them though, so. How many hands on there for parents?
17.
Okay. Who in the house is what might be considered a professional?
Okay. 23.
23. And the age-old question, do we have any double agents in the house?
Yeah.
Somebody who falls into more than one category.
Sixteen.
Okay. Wow. Isn't that interesting? 16 double agents. Okay. So, so how did we decide I was gonna move my slides forward? I'm just gonna give you a thumbs up. There we go. So the name, when Beth had asked me to do this, it always confuses me when I get a very specific request around how to do person-centered planning. And one of the things that I'm really curious about is how can we broaden the idea that person-centered planning is not so much a plan as it is a strategy of thought. So this is intentionally around transition planning for youth. However, this can be used to describe anybody. It could be an adult. It could be a person that doesn't experience disability. It could be around a person who works with people that experience disability. It could be about an agency. It could be about anything really. But what we're going to try to focus on today is youth that are going through transition. So what I called it was person-centered planning is not a noun. It's not a thing. It was never intentionally designed to be a thing. It was designed to be a series of thoughts. So it's really person-centered thinking and not so much person-centered planning. The people who created person-centered planning, in other words, John O'Brien, Beth Mount, Jack Pierpoint, Marcia Forrest, that crew of people never intended for this to be a tool, but more or less a way of shifting thought. So it's about values, it's about strategy, and it's about culture, whether it's in a school system or in an agency or even in a family. We could move forward on my slides. So it requires constant movement. I need you to move forward on the slides. And again, there you go. And another time. Sorry, we'll get this worked out, I promise you. It's really about a series of thoughtful processes. So it's about imagining. How can we imagine a better future for the person that we're working with, or that we are, or that we're supporting? How can you take that imagination and the curiosity that goes with it and make a plan around that? Then once you have a plan, does it stop right there? It shouldn't stop right there. It should be attached to a series of questions and inquiries about how to make that go further, how to move further into the future, and how to shift into something different. So imagine, plan, inquire, shift, and repeat. The process never stops. I think one of the things that we have gotten ourselves into is that we have created a standard, stagnant, and kind of cemented tool that we work off of. And eventually we check the box and decide that we are finished with that and we move on. And we have created a box around what we're doing. And it was never intended to be categorized like that. So we need to be really, really careful that we are shoving ourselves into continuing to be curious and moving forward. If we can go ahead and move my slide. So that there's a million benefits of person-centered planning. One of them is that we are going to collaborate with stakeholders. Depending on what situation you're in, the stakeholders could mean a lot of different people. Who the stakeholders are not are just people that are invited to the person's life because they have a title. Stakeholders are people that actually hold a stake in that person's life. And one of the areas that we get that we've kind of corrupted within the person-centered planning realm is that we've decided that this is a professional process. It's not a professional process. It's about somebody's life. So imagine yourself doing a person-centered plan on yourself. I've done personally 7 person-centered plans, whether they've been paths or essential lifestyle plans or liberty plans or whatever. They've all been life-altering in pretty gigantic ways. And at no time did I ever invite my therapist, my physician, my banker, anybody that holds a professional role in my life. Those people did not come to my person-centered plan. The people that came to my plan are my family members, my best friends, people who decided that they really held a position of wanting the best for me personally, people that decided that they were willing to go to the mat and make sure that the things that I came up with in my plan were important enough for them to hold a stake in that they were going to be held responsible for it at some point. So collaboration with stakeholders is critical as a benefit of person-centered planning. Next. Dreaming. So dreaming is something that a lot of people that experience disability and their family members have not been asked to do. And this happens almost across the board. As soon as somebody is labeled and that becomes the focus of all of the planning in the future, the dreaming is kind of taken out of the scenario where a student, for instance, who's not experiencing disability is given the opportunity to create a curriculum that is focused on them going to college, for instance, or going to a trade school or whatever it is that they decide that they want to do. Oftentimes that's not the situation around people that experience disability. So the dreaming is taken out and it becomes a situation where we just need to kind of get through the next semester. We need to make it to the next IEP. We need to figure out how to proceed until the next IPP. And it's not that we, as a group, as a social construct, have decided that it's not important to plan. It's just the way that the world has kind of created itself within its own infrastructure. We always have to be planning why we are doing what we're doing. We have to prove ourselves. We have to kind of reinvent ourselves all the time, and it doesn't allow itself for open-ended dreaming. So when we do person-centered planning, it reminds us to dream and it teaches us to dream. Go ahead, next one. Avoiding pitfalls is really important. I'm a parent of 2 individuals that have IEPs. My children both have IEPs, and I can tell you that the person-centered planning that I do with them is helpful in that it allows other people to understand what to expect a little bit and how to plan so that their dreams become the forefront of what we're talking about. That it gives more information to the people that are stakeholders that are either professionally or otherwise allowed into my children's lives, so that they can avoid the mishaps before they come up. Go ahead, next one. It allows us to celebrate. A lot of planning, especially in the school system, and this is definitely a wide generalization. So I'm sure there's people on this call that can say, well, that's not the way that we do it in our school, but I'm just saying, as a consultant, this is what I see in general. There's not a lot of room for celebrating what is happening for the child. I do person-centered planning all the time, and every time I walk into an IEP for either of my children, I have to remind the crew to celebrate what the benefits are, because they go through that part. You know, there is a section in the IEP meeting where they say what they're doing good, but it's kind of like we fly through that section as though it's not important. I think that's the most important thing. And so celebrating that is really critical. Person-centered planning allows for that, and allows for reflection on the most important part, is kind of bragging and holding true what we have already accomplished. Next. Training the people that come in contact with the student inside and outside of the school system is really important. A lot of times, or oftentimes, the curriculum for training people is not written down in a sufficient manner. So using a completed person-centered plan, or not a completed one, but one that is done in detail with every person that comes in contact with that person, is a really helpful and very thorough way of training the team. So if everybody's following that person-centered plan, we know we're going in the right direction. So that's one way that the person-centered plan can be used as a part of an IEP process. Next. It's customized. We want to avoid cookie cutter services. When we're working with people within the planning process that only know what they know, that they haven't experienced a lot of outside of the box thinking, that they haven't been able to get to have the luxury of doing creative thinking, creative processing, getting together as a group and sharing ideas and bouncing ideas off of each other and kind of creating from scratch what's going to happen for that person, allows it to be very customized. So it gives the inertia to the planning that can be once in a lifetime. It's relevant to that person and that person only. What we should see is every single plan should be completely different than the next plan, because every single student is completely different from the next. So it allows for customization. Next. In a person-centered plan, it allows for documenting commitment. Personal commitment, a commitment from individual people, a commitment from the person that's being supported, to the family members, to, in some cases, the school district, to friends to, who's going to commit to this person going to get their driver's license in October? Who's going to do that? What day are they going to do it by? What's the process in which they're going to go do it? Commitment is really important, and there needs to be somebody who's going to kind of be the nag to make sure that it comes to fruition, that we don't wait until next annual meeting to go ahead and make sure that that either happened or didn't happen. There's a process in which every part of the creation becomes true, becomes something that can be utilized to move that person forward. Anything that we can do to make sure that it's not just an annual report that's done to check off the list, that's what we need to do. And creating commitment between people who are on that person's side and in that person's corner is really important. Next. And thinking outside of the box. It kind of goes along with customize. We allow ourselves to get stagnant because it's easier. It's really hard to continue thinking what more is possible, what more can be done, what is something that I'm not thinking of yet. Thinking outside of the box is really important, and we need to kind of prompt ourselves to get out of our own way. Next. This allows for us to spend some time doing some intense listening instead of some intense talking, intense telling. It's not about talking and telling. It's about listening and taking that information, creating something out of that. Listening to somebody and regurgitating that and saying, what I hear you say is X. What I hear you say is X, and what do you think about doing this in order to meet that goal? It's the hardest part that we have, especially for those of us who are considered quote unquote professionals. Intense listening, it is said that in the training that we get that that's what we do, but really in the realm of people that are considered social workers, we have been trained to have the answer. That's why we have a job. We're actually resource developers. We're resource case managers. Those are the things that we do for a living. We get paid to do that. Me and specifically, I can speak for myself, like my job is considered a social worker, and and as an executive director of an agency or a CEO or whatever my title is, irrelevant, that my job is to know the answer. And one of the most important parts of what I have learned in my 32 years of doing this is that I need to learn how to say, I don't know. I need to be able to take what I'm hearing and go ahead and say, I don't know, but I certainly am interested in figuring it out. It's the most powerful thing I can do for the people that I support, and it's the most powerful thing I can do for the people that work alongside them. My coworkers need to know that I'm not the bottom line about having the answer. And in the social work industry, that's, I think, where we fall short. We continually believe, because that's the way we've been taught, that we actually have the answers. And it's just not even possible for us to have all the answers to everything that's happening. It's not even possible. So, yeah, go ahead, next person, or next. We come up with an action plan. The person-centered planning tool should come up with an action plan that moves forward day by day. It doesn't come to an end. Like I was saying before, it doesn't end the day that the next annual comes up. It doesn't end on IEP day. It doesn't end when we have a new IPP. That's not when it ends. It ends when it's completed. And sometimes it gets put away. The plan becomes a stagnant piece of paper that gets put away. And as soon as we check off the list, it becomes something that we don't even look at anymore. I'm encouraging people to make sure that it doesn't become a thing, that it becomes a way of how you think. It isn't an actual document. It isn't an actual poster that's been created that has a bunch of really beautiful graphics on it. That could be part of it, but that's not the plan. The person-centered plan is being able to look at that and say, so in my plan, for instance, about 14 or 15 years ago, I had one. My plan was to move from Northern California to San Diego. And I completed that in that year. I didn't have another plan done for about 3 years. So does that mean that my plan just stops? That would have been horrible if that's what happened, but it didn't, because my plan was to move myself forward. Do I continue working on whatever makes me happy, the outcome of the plan, or do I just check that off and then planning is done? So we've gotten ourselves into a situation where we believe that the easiest way to do this is to create a checklist and create a criteria, and then we're done. And that's the easy way to do it. It's not the most appropriate way to do it, but it is the easiest way to do it. Next slide. Okay, so this is a video that I want you to see. It's from a colleague of mine named Beth Mount. She's one of the creators of person-centered planning and the process in which people use it today. So she's one of the master thinkers. If you haven't read anything by Beth Mount, Dr. Beth Mount, she is incredible. So go ahead and play that.
From the origin of person-centered planning, we were trying to understand and see what it looks like when we just fit people into systems and defined their needs and saw them through the eyes of what a system needs for a person to be in order to generate the funding that's required and to basically service them. And system-centered work tends to be based on a medical model which assumes something's wrong with people, and it's the system's job to fix them. And so the system is invested in defining them in terms of their deficiencies and creating a treatment plan, and then working to help people get it right before they get to be members and be whole people in the real world. So person-centered planning offers a major contrast to that, which is to say that people don't belong to systems. They belong to themselves, they belong to their families and their communities. And if we see them in a different light by the capacities that they bring, and we understand that their communities are the place where they can contribute and be citizens, then our thinking shifts dramatically from how to fit people into systems and service them there to how do we support people to live good lives in community, and then how do we take what we need from, and so that services are not bad, they just tend to be wired for their own purposes, for their own self-interest. So a good person-centered planning process calls into question the way we use services and invites us to really change the way most of our services are configured to be more responsive to the people and the way that they want to live in the communities that they're in.
Contact us for more information, for a free demonstration or trial, or to sign up.
All right. So that kind of was an illustration, literally, of what I was kind of trying to say, is that, you know, individuals live within a system that we created, and our job is to kind of deconstruct the system in a way that allows the person to be the key person, or the key focus, and not so much the system. We live within a system that self-perpetuates it, or perpetuates itself year after year after year. And unfortunately, we just kind of get lost in that. And so I really want to challenge people to figure out how to, as Beth was saying, Beth Mount in the video was saying, how to utilize the system rather than be kind of abiding to the system and putting that first. This slide is a slide that's created by John O'Brien and Beth Mount, who are two of my key mentors. And it's called "What More Is Possible," and that statement alone really really structures how we should think about everything we do with somebody that is experiencing disability. What more is possible? That's the sentence that I use every single time I'm trying to plan or train or listen or create. This is a spiral document that shows, beginning with the very center label that says "Ask More of Self." When I'm doing planning, I want to ask myself, what else can I do to make sure that this is going to pop? What more do I ask of myself to make this situation for this person possible? And it goes throughout the sphere as we're planning, and it doesn't really stop until the person achieves membership. So remembering that the final outcome isn't moving on to the next grade or moving into the next residential setting or achieving that goal on the IEP or anything like that. It's not about achieving those little tiny goals. What the outcome is specifically is membership. We want people to feel like they have membership in their community, regardless of what their disability is, regardless of what their label is, regardless of where they are right now. The lives that we're talking about are around people who desired to have valued lives, desired to feel like they are respected, desire to have choice in what they do, desire to be able to contribute back to the community. Those kind of things are extremely important, and they should be guiding what we are doing as far as planning for people. But again, we've been trained and we've been kind of given ourselves kind of the short-sighted, how do we do this in order to meet the criteria for a funding source or for some sort of structure that we're within. So, you know, challenging yourself to ask questions like, what more can I ask of myself? What more can I ask of services? What more can I ask of the community? And really deconstructing how we're doing things right now. How do we break that stuff open? How do we explore community places? How do we discover what's out there? Next slide. This is just a picture of, you know, in my reflection of what I've been doing person-centered planning for. It's not just for students, it's for families, it's for agencies, it's for school districts, it's for you know, anybody that's moving through a transition. And you know, person-centered planning can be done for anybody. This happens to be a picture of two of my colleagues who are married who wanted to start their own business, and their starting their own business would have moved them away from working with me. And it still makes sense because I want them to have the ability to be their best selves while they're with me and move into their next lot in life fully supported and in a positive light. So next slide. So we want to work with the beginning with the end in mind. So again, kind of like what I was just saying, it's about membership. It's not about moving to the next grade or anything like that. It's about membership. The end in mind is membership in the community. It's a big ask if we're talking about supporting a second grader as a transition, or we're talking about supporting an 18-year-old moving into adult life, or we're talking about a 21-year-old graduating from school and moving into an adult day program. It's a big ask to talk about how can we help this person with membership, because it seems like we have an insurmountable amount of tasks to take place, but the end in mind is always membership. How do we create that? And it's harder to look at things that way. It's much harder. but it's so much more valuable, and it has so many more takeaways. Next slide. So this is an example of a person-centered plan. This is called a Liberty Plan, and it's a planning tool that I created kind of out of desperation. It is an adjunct or an alternative to something like a path or a map, which some of you probably have used, I'm not sure. But this is a template to use that allows for a more of a compartmentalized planning process. And the reason why I brought this to the table today isn't because I think the Liberty Plan is the most amazing plan in the world, although it is. Side note, I'm just kidding. It's because, in my opinion, I think that it's not about the planning tool. It's about the idea that you're actually doing a plan. So a person-centered plan can be done anywhere and can be done with any tool or not a tool at all. I think it's important to know or to have been trained in the values of person-centered planning. And knowing some tools is really helpful, but it's not the end-all be-all. And the reason why I'm saying that is because if you know the values, the mission, the strategies of doing process facilitation, which is the part where you ask the questions and you learn how to listen, and you know how to do the values and the strategies of doing the graphic facilitation, then that's what you need. You don't necessarily need the template because it's about values. It's about knowing when to move closer, when to move away. But person-centered planning can be done anywhere. It can be done on a cocktail napkin for all intensive purposes. It can be done, I've done person-centered planning on the side of a barn with cows behind me. I've done person-centered planning where the person was unable to pay attention, so he jumped on a trampoline outside in his driveway and we rode on his garage door. I've done person-centered planning literally in a bar. It doesn't really matter where you are or what you're doing. It's the values are really important. You could know how to do great graphics on a path and not have the values in mind, and it turns out to be really pretty, and then it sits in a closet for the next year. That's inappropriate. That's not helpful. That's actually not only not helpful, but it's harmful. So that's it's really important to keep in mind that what we're trying to figure out is how to do this without considering that the tool itself is the most important part. Next slide. These are the steps to the Liberty Plan. You guys have a copy of the Liberty Plan in the handouts, and it's pretty self-explanatory, so I'm not going to go over exactly all that right now, but you have a handout right there. Next slide. And this is an example of what a finished Liberty Plan might look like. And so, basically it's broken down into several categories that the person determines that they want to work on in their life. It starts out with the round part at the bottom where they have an opportunity to brag about who they are and what other people admire about them. And then it moves into the little triangular sections of each compartment. So in other words, under home, the second one from the left, those are the things that the person has already accomplished in relation to home. In this person's life, they already started a bank account. They already have a good strong team and a good supervisor. Under work, they already had 6 years of working at Pizza Hut and they graduated from high school. And then under the work dream part, they talk about different things that they want to get familiar with. So they want to learn how to ride the trolley to and from work. They want to sell more artwork. They want to have more money, that kind of thing. So in the middle, where it says idea, you come up with the action plan. And this part is critical, where it actually says who's the person that's going to be responsible for it and who's going to, and what timeline that they're going to be able to do that. So that's an example. Next slide. This is an example of a path. Same concept, different template, same concept. This is actually a path that was done for my agency about, looks like 11 years ago, yikes. And so, you know, we were able to have our whole team together at that time, which was really, really small, and create a future for where we wanted to be. And since this time, our agency has had likely 3 or 4 different action plans or person-centered plans done, just to keep moving forward. We have one scheduled for October. Next slide. This is a random plan. So it's just a list of things that want to be worked on for an organization that I'm a part of, the California Supported Living Network. And it's just a graphic depiction of an action plan. So as you can see, none of them look alike. They're all different. This is literally done on a piece of paper. It's not about the process itself. It's not about the tool. It's about making sure that you are a good listener and that you consider every little thing that's happening, that you listen to whoever it is the engaged partner and make sure that it's written in a way that can be accomplished and move forward. Next slide. So when we're talking about person-centered planning, we always want to consider one of the outcomes for what we're doing is around giftedness. And by giftedness, I mean, how can we figure out what the person is really talented in? How do we decide how to move forward if we don't know what the person, what their gifts are, what they bring to the table, what they can contribute? So in person-centered planning, there isn't really a specific way to identify what the person's talents are. And we want to make sure that we add that we talk about that we celebrate the talents and the giftedness. One of the ways that we do that, next slide. Oh, forgot about, okay, so John McKnight says, every single person has capabilities, abilities, and gifts. Living a good life depends on whether those capabilities can be used, abilities expressed, and gifts given. If they are, the person will be valued, feel powerful, and well connected to the people around them. And the community around the person will be more powerful because of the contribution the person is making. And this is true for anybody. Everybody has gifts. It's our job to figure out what they are. John goes on to say that not only is it really important for us to be able to express gifts and give the gifts, but if we don't, that's a personal crisis. That is something that is a reflection of kind of harmful and abusive situations. So that's true about gifts, and that's also true about person-centered planning. Don't ever consider doing some sort of a plan if you're doing it because you need to check a box. If nobody has the intention of following through and making sure that that plan continues to be live versus stagnant, don't plan on doing it. There needs to be somebody that will step up and take charge in that. There needs to be somebody that will decide that that's important enough to take on as a challenge. Next slide. This is another tool that was created, that we created out of the work of John McKnight, the guy that I just quoted. It's called the Head, Heart, Hands tool, and it's a way for us to figure out what giftedness people have, what gifts and talents that people have. John says that gifts come in 3 categories. They come in the category of head, heart, or hands. And gifts of the head are things that you have a lot of knowledge of, that you know a lot about. Gifts of the heart are things that you're really passionate about, that you feel like you could really dig into and be committed to. And gifts of the hands are things that you could actually physically do. So this is a strategy. I believe also, this is also a handout for you. On the second page of the Head, Heart, Hands tool, it kind of tells you how to go through the process and finding out the gifts of, in particular, of a team. You can do it for an individual or you can do it as a team. And what we do at LifeWorks is we use it as a way to indicate what the gifts are on a team so that we can make sure that when we're providing support, that the people that are providing support also have person-centered plans. The people that are doing the direct support work need to be seen as individuals as well. So if I have a team of people who have been recognized for their gifts, and my expectation is that those people will use their gifts at work, they're a lot more likely to be highly engaged and full participants than if I ask them to significantly follow a job description that everybody else has. We're required by law and by, you know, workers' comp rules and all that kind of stuff to have a job description that is general in nature. But I also have individualized job descriptions for for the people that are on each individual team. So we use the head, heart, hands tool as a way to fetter that stuff out. Next slide. Sorry, I'm starting to get a scratchy throat. Sorry. The next best question is a way it's a chapter in the book that I wrote with my colleague Kirk Henkelman. It's called Shifting Organizational Culture, Intentional Teaming, Shifting Organizational Culture. And one of the things that we notice as consultants is that curiosity is kind of a lost art, that people don't require a lot of curiosity out of their work. We're always asking or trying to always ask the next best question. We try really hard not to get stuck in, I'm sorry. We're trying really hard not to get stuck in, oh man, yikes. Okay. Wow. My throat just closed up.
Beth, if you need to take a minute, we actually have a question.
Okay.
Give you a little bit of a break here.
Yeah.
What are the biggest challenges to person-centered planning with high school students?
Well, it's probably the biggest challenge around anything around high school students. I have one of those, by the way, so I can speak from experience. But high school students are unusual because usually the thinking process that they're in just because of their age is a little different than the people around them, right? So oftentimes there's a conflict between what the professionals / parents believe to be necessary for the future and the high school student. I mean, that's just human nature, you know. A 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old just literally has a different way of seeing the world than another person who might be 30, 40, 50, 60, whatever. And it's not a bad thing, it just is. So I think probably the biggest challenge in person-centered planning is that there isn't a lot of camaraderie right off the bat between the people doing the plan and the student. What I've asked people to try to do is have more peers involved in the planning, because they understand more about what's going on in the mind of a 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old than an adult, a parent, or a professional. So they sometimes can allow for kind of reframing of the thought process. I think one of the things that we do as professionals is, you know, the theory that sometimes we're standing on the box that we want to pick up, frustrated because we can't move forward. And the reason is because we're standing on top of the box that we can't pick up. Well, we can't figure out how to plan for an 18-year-old if we can't think like an 18-year-old. Usually what the 18-year-old is asking for is membership. They're not asking for things that are out of the norm. It just might come across as kind of out of the norm. So we need to kind of get out of our own way. That's really important. We need to listen better, and not just listen to the words that are being said, but listen to why they're saying that. Listen to what it really means. Listen to the opportunity to ask the next best question. What does that mean? Why do you feel that way? What if that happened? What would that mean for you? You know, that kind of thing. So I think it's not a student that is experiencing disability doesn't have ideas that are completely outlandish. They just seem outlandish to somebody who's already been through that stage in their life. And that's true for all teenagers. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Beth. There is another question. Is it possible to get a handout of the What More is Possible spiral?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I should have sent that to you. Sure. Should I just send that to you, Beth?
Yes, please.
Okay.
And I'll make sure.
Yeah, definitely.
So did you want to, we do have, I think, a couple more questions, but
Okay.
maybe we should.
You want me to finish this? I think I'm almost done with the slides. I can't remember.
Do you want to look at the others and see? And
Let me see. Yeah, I am almost done. So yeah, go ahead and move to the. So essential lifestyle planning is another type of person-centered planning, and basically what that means is that another conflict that we have within the social service structure, whether it's school or social services or whatever framework surrounds the student that we're talking about, is that we only know what we know. We only know what information that we're given, and we're not very good at asking more questions, even though that's kind of our job. But we do get stuck in thinking that we know the answer, and it's really dangerous. Because sometimes the information that is readily available to us is dangerous information, and it's oftentimes wrong. And the reason why it's wrong is because the social service structure is a perpetuation of the need for services. When I write an annual report, not only am I depicting what's going on with the person that I'm supporting, but I'm also requesting additional funding for the following year. If I only talk about the things that are really great for that person, I'm likely not to get funded. So same with an IEP, right? So if you only talk about how great the student's doing, the IEP might be canceled, or you know, the additional services that person is getting not be, you know, move forward because they're doing so great. It's not usually talked about that they're doing so great because the services are in place. It's usually talked about, well, they're doing so great, so maybe we can reduce services. It's attached to money because that's the social service structure. So when I get information like Martin doesn't have any friends, and I just listen to that and that's all I know, what I wouldn't know is, click again, Martin has difficulty forming relationships because Martin uses assisted typing for his communication. He needs support to build bridges with people. He also uses Facebook and email to increase opportunities for lengthy and more challenging conversations. So Martin doesn't have any friends is dramatically different than Martin needs a little bit of support to use other adaptations to create friendships, right? So it would dramatically change how I would support him. Click one more time. Brian cannot brush his teeth. So what does that tell me about somebody? So if I'm getting, like, I am the service provider that receives children on the other end of transition. I receive the students that are graduating from high school or moving into adult life. And oftentimes I would get something like that. Brian cannot brush his teeth. And then immediately I would think, well, okay, he's 20. So does he have any teeth? Like, how does he not brush his teeth? But what the truth is about Brian is he can't brush his teeth without support. He needs total assistance with this task, which may look like actual hand over hand or even at times just doing it for him. He may need to move around a lot during this process. He may appear to be resistive, but is easily redirected if the support person allows him time to finish and is not pushy. He needs time and space. Give this task some time to finish successfully. Don't rush him, it won't work. So that's a lot different. If I'm using this tool to train my staff and all it says is Brian cannot brush his teeth, but I'm not really sure how to move forward with that. But if I give them the second paragraph, they're going to know what to do the next time it's time for Brian to brush his teeth. Next click.
Beth, I just need to tell you that we have just about 5 more minutes.
Okay.
The time has gone by much too quickly.
Yes,
so,
it has. Should we just move to questions then?
I think that might be a good idea.
Okay.
And if we can get your permission, I know we had some folks asking to be able to get some, like a PDF of some of your other slides as well. Is that possible for us to do that?
Is it possible for you to just send them the PowerPoint?
Would you give us permission to?
I'm trying to remember. I don't have any pictures of anybody on here, right? I have the picture of, okay, blah, blah, blah. No, yeah, that's fine. And actually, would they be able to use that then to get the what more is possible slide to print out?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, yes. You can have my permission to use the whole PowerPoint if you'd like.
Okay. So maybe I'll just leave the slide on that quote and,
yes.
and ask you, person-centered plan is outside of the systems of most organizations. Any suggestions as to how it can be incorporated in the system? We operate on a checklist, as you stated, but my mindset is similar to person-centered planning. Are there suggestions as to how I can incorporate this?
It requires a big shift, and it requires a mindset that, you know, every single time you meet with somebody, every single time you have a meeting about somebody, that's how you, that is how you lead the meeting, that is how you participate in a meeting, that there's always questions and inquiry and allowing yourself to not get stuck. I don't think that there's a specific way to do it, but an example would be for us at LifeWorks, when we're trying to do person-centered planning around people, we do things like every meeting we start out with a question out of a jar that starts conversations. Like, I mean, they're kind of quirky questions, but things like, you know, if you could invite 5 people to dinner, dead or alive, who would they be and why? Those kind of questions get people talking, and they lead to examples of not being stuck in the regular ritual of how we do things. And so, you know, what I know to be true is that oftentimes the systems are stuck on time limits. You know, they might have an hour and a half scheduled away for an IEP meeting. The most important pieces of the IEP meeting are the discussion about how to move forward and not so much about reading the document. So if we can do things like send everybody the document ahead of time and expect them to read it and know what they're talking about, we don't have to spend time going over what every little thing says. In the meetings that I attend that are about students, it's oftentimes the administrator and their leadership that creates the protocol for how the meetings are going to go. So I think it's really important that whoever is the designated leader, that they understand more about person-centered planning and less about strategies of systems. And that's really hard. It's really hard. I'm not suggesting that any of this is easy. I am indicating that I understand that it's really hard and it requires a system shift.
Beth, this is Beth. And if I could just mention, and this may be a good transition point for us, that through our project and through Peak's experience over the years with person-centered practices and planning, we found that it's so important to educate youth and families regarding the possibilities, and so that they can assume their rightful place as empowered individuals who can advocate for these types of practices. And also, you know, working outside the system. I know as a parent myself, my son has a circle of support that and he's an adult, meets 4 times a year. And so that's why we feel it's so important to keep folks educated.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And empowered. And Beth, I want to thank you so much for your time today. This has been excellent, and we've gotten several comments already about how appreciative folks are of your wisdom and your strategies. And I want to, there we are. I have just a couple of announcements, and then I know that Pam also has a couple of logistical pieces she wants to remind everyone about. Beth, can't thank you enough. We want to be, we can be a conduit for folks who may have other questions for you. Folks asked for the title of your book, and we typed that in. Okay. We would love to have you do some more for us. So we'll always keep in mind, and I know you're a busy woman, but this is very, very valuable for us. So thanks.
Thank you.
There's one more webinar left in this series. It's next Wednesday, starting the school year off right. So we encourage you to be here for that. Please contact PEAK for transition assistance and information. We have the Shift Project here. We have a great cadre of transition and parent advisors here. We are offering trainings in Colorado. We archive all of our webinars on the PEAK website, and we're hoping to have this webinar archived as well on our website, so that folks, and you can maybe recommend it to additional folks to access it. So we've got a lot of resources available. There's just some examples of some of our webinars. And we will make this PowerPoint. We'll put it in PDF format and do a follow-up email to everyone. PEAK's annual conference on inclusive education encompasses some great inspirational speakers and a lot of good information. It's coming up February 8th and 9th, so we want to promote that. And Pam, I think I can turn this over to you now. Thank you again, Beth, so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you, Beth. And very soon, as long as all of that technology works, you'll be receiving a follow-up email with the link for the recording of today's webinar. And again, please remember to fill out the evaluation. To request a certificate of completion, please email me, Pam Christie at pchristie@peakparent.org. Thank you to our wonderful presenter, Beth, and to everyone for attending. If you have any additional questions, please contact Shirley Swope at 719-531-9400 or sswope@peakparent.org. On behalf of Peak Parent Center and today's presenter, thank you for joining us and have a great rest of your day.